Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Meher Sher and these are the headlines. The Indian Army is planning a false operation on the pretext of fake encounter of 3 Kashmiri detainees. Diplomatic sources said these Kashmiri civilians are already in Indian police custody at Kishtwar district of occupied Kashmir. They said the false operation will be aimed at crafting fabricated stories against Pakistan. Indian farmers are observing a day-long nationwide hunger strike against the farm laws. Police have stopped the protesters from going towards the capital after they blocked the Delhi-Jaipur highway. Farmers have been protesting for 19 days now, demanding the Indian government to repeal the 3 farm laws. Eleven civilians have been killed in government airstrikes in Afghanistan's southern Kandahar province. Witnesses say women and children were among those killed after the air raid hit a residential area. Afghanistan's defense ministry said it is aware of the reports of civilian casualties and it will investigate the matter. Meanwhile, 10 Afghan soldiers have been killed in a Taliban attack in northern Kunduz province. The global coronavirus death tally has exceeded 1.6 million, while the infections from the virus has topped 72 million. The U.S.'s death tally is fast approaching 300,000, while its infections have surpassed the 16 million figure. Meanwhile, in India, the COVID-19 has taken over 143,000 lives and infected more than 9.8 million people. Pakistan has registered over 2,300 new infections and 36 deaths in the last 24 hours, pushing its toll to over 8,800. And in football, Barcelona have edged past Levante 1-0 to move to 8th place in the La Liga standings. Lionel Messi was Barcelona's savior yet again and scored the only goal of the game in the 76th minute. Well, those were the headlines. More news in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now for the news in more detail. The Indian Army is planning a false operation on the pretext of fake encounter of 3 Kashmiri detainees. Diplomatic sources said these civilians are already in Indian police custody in occupied Kashmir. Sources said India will propagate old arrests in the Kishtwar district of the occupied valley as new. They added the confiscated weapons will also be propagated as new recovery. Sources said the false operation will be aimed at crafting fabricated stories against Pakistan. Another unprovoked Indian ceasefire violation across the line of control has wounded a 45-year-old Pakistani civilian. Pakistan military's media wing says the Indian troops deliberately targeted civilians in the Cherikot sector with mortars. This year, India has killed 27 people in over 2,000 ceasefire violations. Pakistan has repeatedly summoned Indian diplomats to register its protest over such incidents of aggression. Islamabad maintains that India is resorting to such tactics to distract world attention away from its brutalities in occupied Kashmir. And the protesting Indian farmers are observing a day-long nationwide hunger strike against the farm laws. Farmers have been demonstrating for 19 days now. The farmer unions are holding protest rallies, sit-ins, and a day-long hunger strike across the country. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal said he is also observing the strike and appealed to the central government to scrap the legislation. Police have stopped the protesters from going towards the capital after they blocked the Delhi-Jaipur highway. The protesters call for the complete repeal of anti-farmers law that ended government's procurement of their produce at fixed rates. They argue that the new laws by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government has exposed them to corporate exploitation. And 11 civilians have been killed in government airstrikes in Afghanistan's southern Kandahar province. Witnesses say women and children were among those killed after the air raid hit a residential area. Defense Ministry said it is aware of the reports of civilian casualties and it will investigate the matter. In a tweet, former President Hamid Karzai strongly condemned the airstrike that killed children. Meanwhile, 10 Afghan soldiers were killed and 4 others wounded in a Taliban attack in northern Kunduz province. Officials said the group's commander of border guards was among those killed. However, the Taliban claimed to have killed 17 soldiers and overrun 2 security checkpoints in the province. It comes a day after the Afghan government said its forces killed 65 Taliban fighters in Kandahar province. Meanwhile, the negotiating team of the Afghan government is returning to Kabul today at the end of the current round of talks. They have agreed on a 23-day break in their 3-month discussions with the Taliban. The two sides agreed on a 21-article list of procedural rules for the talks. They have also finalized an initial list for the agenda of the peace negotiations. A member of the government's negotiating team, Habiba Sarabi, said the delegation will hold consultations in Kabul to find common ground for all sides. And moving on, the world has recorded more than 1.6 million deaths from the coronavirus and 72 million infections so far. In the United States, the death toll is fast approaching 300,000 with more than 16 million cases. Meanwhile, India recorded more than 27,000 new cases and 336 deaths overnight. More in the following report.
The first COVID-19 vaccines have arrived in Canada, with some Canadians likely to get the jab over the next 24 hours. Hospitalizations in the U.S. hit another record, clocking above 100,000 for the 12th consecutive day. President-elect Joe Biden has outlined a strategy to vaccinate 100 million Americans from 50 states in the first 100 days of his administration.
The necessary funding from Congress, we can get most of our schools open in 100 days, but we need the help from the Congress and the funding. The first 100 days won't end the COVID-19, but meeting those goals can slow the spread, save lives, and get us back to our lives with the people we love the most.
Persistently high infection rates across Europe have prompted governments from London to Athens to strengthen or maintain curbs on movement. Italy has overtaken the UK to become the nation with the highest death toll in Europe, with more than 64,000 deaths. Meanwhile, things seem to be improving in Oceania. New Zealand has agreed to form a quarantine-free travel bubble with Australia in the first quarter of 2021.
Cabinet has agreed in principle to establish a travel bubble with Australia, we anticipate in the first quarter of 2021. Pending confirmation from the Australian Cabinet and no significant change in the circumstances of either country. Officials have been working on a range of matters and good progress has been made.
South Korea reported 780 new coronavirus cases, a drop from the record daily increase of the day earlier. And Eswatini Prime Minister Ambrose Dlamini, who tested positive for COVID-19 4 weeks ago, has died at age 52.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 36 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This takes the country's death toll to over 8,832. Health officials reported 2,362 new infections overnight. Meanwhile, more than 47,000 active COVID-19 cases have been detected in the country. The Health Ministry says out of over 440,000 countrywide cases, more than 384,000 people have recovered. The ministry said over 195,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province. Punjab has reported nearly 127,000 cases. Moving on, Iran has summoned the German and French envoys over the European Union's condemnation of the hanging of a journalist. Ruhollah Azzam was accused of provoking unrest and inspiring nationwide economic protests. State media said Iran told Ambassador Hans Udo Muzel any interference in its domestic affairs was unacceptable. In a statement after the announcement of the execution, the EU said it condemned the capital punishment in the strongest terms. France also called the hanging a grave blow to freedom of speech in Iran. Zam's website and channel provided information on the timing of nationwide anti-government protests in 2017. And in Saudi Arabia, an oil tanker off the port city of Jeddah suffered an explosion after being hit by an external source. Shipping company Hafnia said the blast caused a fire on board the BW Rhine. It said no one was injured, but parts of the ship's hull were damaged. The company warned it was possible some oil leaked out from the site of the blast. Saudi Arabia did not acknowledge the attack immediately. The United Kingdom Marine Trade Operations urged ships to the area to exercise caution and said investigations were ongoing. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council has voiced concerns over military escalation and food insecurity in Yemen. In a statement, the members of the Council condemned the last month's Houthi attack on oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. The statement said Council reiterated its commitment to an inclusive Yemeni-led and Yemeni-owned political process. It said the Council also reaffirmed international community's commitment to uphold Yemen's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity. The Security Council expressed alarm at reports showing 13.5 million Yemenis being at risk of acute starvation. The Council also emphasized the importance of facilitating humanitarian assistance to prevent the enormous loss of life. Now, Iraq's oil ministry has managed to put out a fire at one of 2 oil wells in the northern Khabaz oil field. In a statement, the oil ministry said efforts are underway to contain the fire at the second well. It said production from the roughly 25,000 barrel per day field has not been affected. The well was set ablaze on December 9th by explosive devices in an ISIS attack. And more than 300 students are still missing in a mass kidnapping incident in Nigeria's Katsina state. Katsina's governor, Aminu Masari, said the authorities are yet to account for almost 333 students. However, Masari said efforts are being made to ascertain the actual number of children that have been kidnapped. He said students who managed to escape the attackers have been coming out of hiding in the forest. A student who managed to flee spoke about his ordeal.
When I decided to run, they brought a knife to slaughter me, but I ran away quickly. I ran into the crowd. They couldn't get me. Then I put my clothes upside down so that they could not see me. From there, they said they would kill whoever is trying to escape. Then I began to run, climbing one rock to another through a forest.
Nigeria's defense minister said the military will pursue the attackers and rescue the students without any collateral damage. And now moving on, the United States says it has formally removed Sudan from the list of states sponsoring terrorism after 27 years. This comes after Washington brokered a normalization of ties deal between Khartoum and Tel Aviv. The U.S. Embassy in Khartoum says the congressional notification period of 45 days has lapsed and the Secretary of State has signed the notification. Sudan was put on the list in 1993 over allegations that the ousted president Omar al-Bashir was harboring militants. It has cut Sudan off from financial assistance and investment. China has asked the U.S. to stop abusing state power to crack down on foreign companies. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said this at a news briefing in Beijing. Wang said Beijing will continue to uphold the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese firms. Earlier, NASDAQ said it will remove the shares of 4 Chinese construction and manufacturing companies from the indices. NASDAQ decided in response to a U.S. order restricting the purchase of their shares. And hackers have broken into the networks of the U.S. Treasury and Commerce Departments. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security's cybersecurity arm say they are investigating the breach. Officials say the hacking appears to be a large-scale penetration of U.S. government agencies. The hacks come less than a week after foreign hackers broke into FireEye's network, stealing the company's hacking tools. The company's customers included federal, state, and local governments and top global corporations. In a statement, a National Security Council spokesperson said the government is taking all necessary steps to identify and remedy any possible issues related to the situation. Meanwhile, Russian embassy in Washington has called the cyber attacks contradictory to Moscow's foreign policy principles. And Apple says it is investigating the Wistron facility in India after violence erupted at the Bengaluru plant. Unidentified Indian factory workers trashed the facility and demanded unpaid wages and better working hours. In a statement, Apple said it was dispatching additional staff and auditors to the site. It said the company's teams were in close touch with the local authorities. Police say they have arrested 149 people over the violence. Earlier in a statement, Wistron said it was deeply shocked by the violence, which it blamed on unknown persons with unclear intentions. More news after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now moving on, 14 migrants from Venezuela have been found dead in waters near the coast of Trinidad and Tobago. In a statement, Caracas said the ship carrying migrants from the coastal town of Guerilla was wrecked en route. The Trinidadian Coast Guard said Venezuelan authorities informed them of the incident. Preliminary information suggested that the boat left on December 6th with more than 20 people on board. Venezuelan officials said the boat was allegedly detained in Trinidad and returned to Venezuela. They said they have not ruled out the possible involvement of criminal groups. The Trinidadian Coast Guard, however, said that it had not intercepted any boats from Guerilla. And in Australia, heavy rain and strong winds along the Queensland and New South Wales coastline have generated huge, sturdy waves. They washed away parts of the beach while destructive winds and rain caused widespread flooding. BYRON Mayor Simon Richardson says the main beach is a popular tourist destination in New South Wales and has all but disappeared. A concrete walkway and a tree along the beach collapsed into the sea. Byron Bay is home to Hollywood A-listers such as Chris Hemsworth. Meanwhile, a dog was rescued from sea foam as strong waves hammered the Gold Coast. The wet conditions contrast with bushfires that ravaged World Heritage-listed Fraser Island in Queensland a few weeks ago. And John le Carré, who forged thrillers from equal parts of adventure, moral courage, and literary flair, has died at aged 89. The spy who came in from the cold and tinker, tailor, soldier spy author died from pneumonia. Born as David Cornwell in 1931, le Carré wrote under a pseudonym. His longtime agent, Johnny Geller, described him as an undisputed giant of English literature. He challenged Western assumptions by defining for millions the moral ambiguities of the battle between the Soviet Union and the West. Paying tribute, Stephen King said this terrible year has claimed a literary giant and a humanitarian spirit. And a Chinese space capsule bringing back the first moon rocks in more than 4 decades has begun its return trip to Earth. It spent about 6 days in lunar orbit. The China National Space Administration said the Chang'e's 5 lunar probe left the orbit by activating 4 engines for about 22 minutes. The mission landed on the moon earlier this month and collected about 2 kilograms of samples. The return capsule is expected to land in northern China in the Inner Mongolia region in mid-December. The samples would be the first brought back since the Soviet Union's Luna 24 probe in 1976. And in China, a dazzling Geminid meteor shower has been captured in the Jade Dragon Snow Mountain. The Geminid meteor shower reached its peak on the wee hours in the Lijiang city of Yunnan province.
The Geminids appear to emerge from the Gemini constellation are pieces of an asteroid known as 3200 Phaethon. Every year in mid-December, the Earth passes through the debris, ice and rock from the asteroid, which upon contacting the Earth's atmosphere burn up and leave a streak across the sky. With a high altitude, Lijiang has favorable astronomical resources. The Jade Dragon Mountain is located at 27.5 degrees north latitude, which serves as an excellent observation point. Jade Dragon Snow Mountain is one of the few observation sites that are internationally recognized.
And tourists are flocking to southern Chile to experience the total solar eclipse that will darken the skies today. It will also be visible in Argentina. More in this report.
It would only seem appropriate that the final eclipse in this eccentric year of 2020 will be visible only from Patagonia, nicknamed the end of the world, because it reaches the bottom of South American continent. Residents and tourists in Chile are buying special eyewear to safely view the total solar eclipse in the town of Villarrica. It will turn daytime into twilight for up to 2 minutes and 10 seconds as the moon passes in front of the sun.
We have been planning this trip since the last eclipse in Vicuna on July 2nd, 2019. More or less 45 friends came by bus using all the health measures that I know, and we're hoping to see the event tomorrow from our cabin.
Parts of Chile are some of the best locations in the world to watch the astronomical events due to their clear skies. The eclipse will then cross the imposing Andes mountain range to be visible only in Argentina. A partial eclipse will be visible throughout the American continent as well as parts of southwestern Africa.
And now moving on to business, China's cargo transport index maintained rapid growth in November as the economy continues to recover from the pandemic. China Academy of Transportation Sciences says the index stood at 173.6. But on a year-on-year basis, the data shows a 2.9% decline, almost the same as that in October. The sub-index for cargo transport was 198.4, up 7.4% year-on-year last month. This is the 7th consecutive month that saw growth. Meanwhile, China's new home prices grew in November at their slowest monthly pace since March. And European stocks are trading higher as market focus remains on optimism regarding the UK and EU's talks on a post-Brexit trade deal. European stock 600 has edged up more than 0.5%, with bank stocks bouncing over 2.5%. London's FTSE 100 has edged up marginally, while Italy's FTSE MIB has added close to 1%. Frankfurt's DAX and the CAC 40 in Paris have also gained over 0.5%. Earlier Asian bourses traded mixed, with mainland Chinese and Japanese stocks gaining, while Seoul's Kospi and Hong Kong's Hang Seng shed. And now moving on to sports. In football, Barcelona have edged past Levante 1-0 to move to 8th place in the La Liga standings. Lionel Messi was Barcelona's savior yet again and scored the only goal of the game in the 76th minute. Levante's goalkeeper Aitor Fernandez was inspired from blocking attacks from Barcelona's strikers. But Messi left Fernandez clueless with a strike from an angle after Frankie de Jong's assist. The 5th league win moves Barcelona to 2 places up the La Liga table. Barca are set to face the leaders Real Sociedad in their next encounter on Wednesday. And in the English Premier League, Liverpool missed out on the chance to move to the top as they drew an impressive Fulham 1-1. Bobby de Cordova-Reid put Fulham in the driving seat with a lead in the 25th minute of the first half.
Mohamed Saleh fired a low penalty in the 79th minute to rescue Liverpool with a draw. In another league match, a desperate Arsenal suffered a 1-0 defeat at the hands of Burnley. The defeat marks the Gunners' 4th straight loss in league games for the first time since 1961. Meanwhile, Leicester City thrashed Brighton 3-0 to jump to 3rd place in the Premier League. 24-year-old James Maddison scored twice in the first half, followed by striker James Vardy sealing the win. In another competition, Crystal Palace denied leaders leaders Tottenham a win as they drew 1-1.
And now it's time to take a look at the latest weather updates from around the world. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.